Hi, such an honor to have you with us.
Thank you so much.
Please have a seat. You sit right here in the middle.
Congratulations, Sebastian. Fantastic, huh?
So Sebastian, this was such an amazing film and so touching. And one of the things I wanted to ask you, I mean, this happened in the 80s. It really happened some time ago. So why did Ken Wilber choose you to tell this story, to write this story, to direct this movie, and why now?
That's a great question. There's a gestation period that differs with everything that's born, right? With every child, with every flower, with every book, with every song, with every film. And film is such a collaborative venture. It requires so many pieces to come together at just the right moment to make it happen in just the right way. I think that many people came before me to try to make it into a film and wanted to make just an illness story or just a love story or just something in this way. And his work has spoken to me so deeply, and then this work spoke to me so deeply that I was fully committed. And I think he felt that. He and I were simpatico already at that point, and I think he fully trusted me, that he knew that I knew enough of his voice to be able to put that on screen as part of this story.
And so, as you told this story, it was a story of love, it was a story of illness, but it was a story of something more, of a very personal kind of learning. I mean, one of my favorite lines in the movie when she said, "When I met this guy, he had a chair and a typewriter and 4,000 books," right? That's who he was. He knew so much. He had so much intellectual knowledge. And yet, in the movie, we saw him often looking at Treya. And you directed this so beautifully. I mean, these were such lovely moments when he was really almost reading her like a text. And he seemed to be learning something from her that was only available from another human being, that is not available in a text. And you just made that come through so beautifully. So I wondered if you could talk about that a little bit.
Thanks so much for that. It's beautiful what you're saying about this being experiential, because a film like this is experiential, and I'm an intellectual. I love intellectuals, but an intellect without a heart is useless. And I think that even in some ways, a lot of the people who have been critical against this film, who don't want you to see this film, have been just that. Intellectuals trying to dissect something. But audiences love it. Audiences who want to engage, who want to have something, feel something. That's why I fell in love with music. That's why I fell in love with books. That's why I fell in love with movies. I think that this particular story articulates something about these two gorgeous, evolved human beings and shows them having this experience that despite all of their wisdom, despite all of their strengths, that still surrendering to love demands this sort of crucifixion that makes way for this epic resurrection. His arc in this story is from head to heart, from student to teacher. Her arc is from teacher to student. Her arc is from student to teacher, that he ends up learning from her, that she ends up teaching him through this experience, that he has to embody all these things that he's so gloriously written about and articulated. And also her arc is from doing to being. You know, that she's get the guy, beat the illness, keep it together, and then finally, with complete surrender, what Treya calls passionate equanimity, let's give everything we have to everything that we're doing. Let's give our best to every moment without an attachment to result. That's when the miracle, sort of happens. You know, as Maryann writes so much about this surrender to allow love to come through, that we get ourselves out of the way. So thank you for that, because this film is really experiential. It's not an easy one. There are not a lot of car chases or explosions. I took all the car chases out because I want the audience to have an experience. I want them to go through this just as I, when I read the book, went through the experience. Yeah.
It was so experiential and so lovely, and I want to ask Maryann now. It's such an honor to have you here with us.
Thank you.
And I have to... And I want to ask you to talk about what transcends or goes beyond the intellectual. And we want to keep this centered on the film, but also we have to mention that you are, and I confirmed this with Patrick, the only guest we have ever had at the Sedona International Film Festival that has been a presidential candidate for the United States of America. And you had some Sedona supporters, let me tell you. But what you did on that stage, I want to say, is that you brought love into the conversation. You showed that what's happening in this country is not just a political problem, but that it's a spiritual problem and a connection with one another. So can you just talk about your work in this area and relate it to the film?
Well, one of the things I feel about the film is that it is very political. 600,000 people have died of COVID in the United States. And that is the exact number of people who will die of cancer in the United States this year. Wow. We lose 600,000 Americans every year to cancer. It is the epidemic of our times. And yet, of course, it gets a fraction of the attention in terms of the media than COVID. And the reason for that is exactly something I talked about in my campaign. The carcinogens that are in our food, the carcinogens that are in our water, the carcinogens that are in our air, the carcinogens that are being spewed constantly. And you know, even though this story is so profoundly one particular love story, that love story, even tonight, is being played out among thousands of people. My own sister died of breast cancer in 1994. That was certainly the story of her and her husband. My sister was 44 when she died, and she had 3 little girls. The amount of suffering. So to me, the fact that this film puts a very human face on cancer, everyone in this, very definitely the majority of people in this room, just statistically I can say that, if not everyone, has known someone, lost someone to cancer. This is just everywhere. It's so ubiquitous. We don't even talk about it beyond my friend who had it or my loved one who died. And so I think part of what I love about this film is it makes us have to look at this. And yes, that is one of the things I talked about when at the debate when we were talking about a healthcare system. And I said that we need to talk about the fact that we need to do more than just talk about how to pay for health care. We have to ask ourselves, why is there so much more chronic illness, including cancer, in the United States than there are in other advanced democracies? You have, between the GMOs, the genetically modified foods. You have the Chinese coming over here. It's so interesting. And they buy factories which produce food that they will not even allow to be sold in China. So it's interesting that you say that because you're right. I feel the political issues are not being discussed in human terms. So I feel politics should be more human, and I feel a movie like this is actually very political. Because that's what we're talking about here is the suffering of human beings. That's all, you know, if you strip everything away, that's what matters.
Thank you so much for connecting that. And Sebastian, I want to turn this back to you now because I think one of the things you illustrated so well is that the suffering of human beings appears to be a private matter because we have this illusion that it's just, you know, located in my physical self. But what you showed so beautifully was that this illness inside her body supposedly really affected someone else. So this is the beginning of the political, right? This is not just me, an isolated person, but we're all interconnected. And you showed that interconnected and showed how it affected him psychically, how it affected his work. And I'd just like you to talk about that because I thought it was just such a brilliant illustration.
Beautiful. to see, I think one of the things about this story, one of the things about this book, one of the things about this as a film is it references what's possible in love. There's a reference point for what's possible, right? We all, growing up, want to be loved in this way and should aspire to love in this way. And I think by putting this on screen, it articulates that this is a standard of what can I do, how can I show up more, what can I give of myself? And the reward in that giving is my own transformation, right? That love crucifies us in ways that we never suspect. You know, falling in love with someone is going to yield something far in the future or immediate, in this case, 10 days after marriage, that's going to be so hard that we're going to want to walk away. And Maryann and I were having a discussion earlier today. Some people would get a pass for walking away. Oh, it's okay, you didn't have to sign up the rest of your life for that. But what's really going on here? What's worth the price of the candle, right? We're alive for one instant. Let's sign up for what's coming into our world through the ones we love and extend that love as far out as possible into humanity, right? In that way, these two human beings are transformed through love. And I think that poetically, when we watch a movie or hear a song or read a book about that transformation, it's something we aspire to. Yeah, and I think that that's why I fell in love with Marvin Gaye and so many great writers, and that you hear it and you hear it and you hear this great lyric or this beautiful rhythm, and then one day you're in love and your heart's broken and you hear it and it hits you differently, right? Hence everyone in this room, just by seeing the trailer, just by coming here tonight, everyone in this room is a tender human being, right? Like this is, it brings us together in this way, this type of art form, this type of expression, to celebrate that and then hopefully share it with others.
Both of the actors were so wonderful, and they allowed you to really present the story as that of two people. And I think now, more than there was in the 1980s, there is more of a conversation of the drama of the caregiver. And I think that's one of the things that's very modern about the film, is the realization that what he was going through was as great as what she was going through.
Yes, can you talk a little bit about his breakdown, right? I mean, at first he was very noble, he picked this up, he was going to be right there, but this is traumatic. Caregiving is traumatic, and it was something that no one was prepared for. Can you talk a little bit about portraying that experience, which, again, I think you did so amazingly. The tenderness in the beginning of the film when they're lying on the floor, and you can just feel the ease and the fun and the wonder of it, and then the real tension when she is reading the paper in his office.
Why won't she leave the room? Well, that's the one scene I wanted to ask you. Why won't she leave the room? What was the story? I can't remember in the book. Why won't she leave the room?
I'm going to call Ken tomorrow.
I wanted to ask you that. I couldn't understand.
There is, I think, this thing that happens, right, in a relationship where there starts to be an entitlement between one another, that we start to, that what is in the shadow becomes invisible to us, that we're projecting and putting it on the other person. And in something that's hyper, that, where the tension goes up and the stakes go up, the shadow comes out bigger and bigger and bigger in every one of us. And how do we spot it? Well, maybe the other person spots it, and then there's a crack and a break. And I think there, in this particular circumstance, his identity as a person in the world, he wrote his first book at 24. It changes the world of transpersonal psychology and philosophy and spirituality. His identity as a writer is so strong. And he meets this woman, and she's in awe of him and in love with him. And then all of a sudden, now he's no longer writing. He doesn't know, well, who am I? The irony behind this meditative practice, who am I? Right? Who am I? And then all of a sudden that has to be totally broken. And I think intuitively both of them allow it to go to that place, to be broken with this sort of omega point pull to evolve, knowing this is something that's eternal, that reaches beyond. Let's let it break all the way, was my feeling.
Right, but that really is the ultimate Socratic question, right? Like, who am I? Know yourself. This seems so obvious. How could I not know myself? I'm with myself all the time, right? Know yourself. But this is the continual inquiry.
You know, the Course in Miracles says, do not look to yourself to find yourself, for you're not there. Yourself is found in relationship. He could not find himself in a self-referential, narcissistic place. He found himself through complete surrender and service to another human being in love. That's how we find ourselves, our true selves. That's why it's such a spiritual journey.
And, you know, I use that piece of dialogue as a voiceover from Ken's book, No Boundary, and then also references back a lot in that book to Ramana Maharshi, who I'm sure is very popular in this room, who was a huge influence on me as well, talking about this I as well. And I think of that also, that even being able to bring this on screen is not an act, for me, it's an act of being in total service and following that intuitive guide wherever it would show up. And then you know, there's a lot of synchronicity in this film, I think, because the people who showed up to be part of it and support it have been in service to it. You know, everything from the house that you saw, we didn't plan that house to look exactly like the house Ken was in front of. I did not cast these actors to look like the real people. I wanted the interiors to look like the real characters inside. And Stuart Townsend shaved his head on the first day of filming right before, and we didn't know that he looked that much like Ken. And then he came upstairs and we were like, whoa! Everyone was really excited about the whole thing. But I felt when I met him, he was the right guy. He had this huge emotional well to pull from. Inside, he was this charming, intellectual, charismatic, soulful, spiritual guy who also had a great sort of wicked sense of humor. Yeah. And Mina as well, when we met, we talked for 3 hours. She cried a couple times at the first meeting and about the script and talking. I just knew inside, this is the woman, this is the one. She's the one for sure, without a doubt. Yeah. And now, retrospective, I can't imagine any other two actors in the world playing these two roles. Yeah.
They're both so good, so good.
Yeah, and I just want to say what a beautiful writer you are, how well done this was. You were saying that he had a great sense of humor. I mean, this was a really tough film, a really tough subject, but there was levity, there was humor. I mean, it was so human, really beautiful.
Thank you. The audience was laughing a lot in here. I really enjoyed that. And I flew to Denver to show Ken the film before it came out. If you want to tell me when it's out everywhere on Amazon and some theaters, it just came out, it's on Apple, everywhere, Movie Stream. But I flew to Denver to show it to Ken before it came out, and he laughed the whole way through. And I thought, either he's laughing because he's going to choke me right after seeing this, or there's something that's delectable in here, that's so true that it's painful, and that's when we laugh, and a lot of times, right? That when the I is removed, as you're talking about, we get ourselves out of the way, then we can laugh because we can say, oh, it's only me that's being crucified. Really, the I that's behind me gets to go on and can look at this, that the humor comes from there.
That's true, but it's also true that there is a very pure and healthy sadness that this film takes you to. It's just sad, but you know, there's that story of the Buddhist monk who's standing at his master's grave, and somebody says to him, I thought you were enlightened. Why are you? He was crying. So they said to the Buddhist monk, I thought you were enlightened. Why are you crying? And the Buddhist monk said, because I am sad. There's just something pure and sad in the way, what is it? Another line from Jung. Jung said, all neurosis is a substitute for legitimate suffering. This world would be much better off if we did more legitimate suffering. We do so much illegitimate suffering because we're not allowing ourselves the legitimate suffering, and that's what I think is the role of art and the success of this film. It takes you to a very human recognition and experience, you keep talking about it being experiential, of the sadness, of love cut short, human suffering. And as I said before, when you really think about it, cancer in this country, it's all over the world, but something goes on here that's not allowed to go on in other countries. And we just don't even talk about it. But we all know it.
Yes, and speaking of other countries, I wanted to go back to the treatments in Germany and the German doctor's statement, which I thought was so profound. He said that tumor, remember, is surrounded by a person, right? That person is there, and it harms not only the person but the soul. Right, that this is affecting the soul. That was such a beautiful thing to bring in.
Thank you. That, I think, there are some scenes where the book's 400 pages, so how do you truncate that into 118 minutes or whatever? And So there was a lot of that's directly from Treya's journals. And with that doctor in particular, I kept a lot of it, some of it verbatim. Yeah. No, that's his line, but it was as referenced or as chronicled by Ken and Treya. And yes, that this guy was a legend at that time. He was really well known, that Bob Marley had gone there, Yul Brynner had gone there, that they were saying, let's go and try this aggressive, assertive, short-term treatment because it seems to be the way to not drag this thing on according to what other people think ought to be done. Medical fields ought to be, saying that, hey, people are going to try this experiential therapy and are having a better time of it. Not just the individuals, but the caretakers and people feeling like this isn't as brutal on my lovers, my loved ones, on myself, on my heart. Yeah, I think that we do drop into, as it explores here in this story, we drop into this idea of going to the doctor like going to the mechanic, right? I'm going to just fix this thing or that thing and that thing. But what else is going on? The psychology around that. Everybody loves that dog, right? And is missing a leg or an eye, right? It's a beautiful thing. The dog's not stressed at all, right? And we get inspired by that. If we could be like that in some way, but we can't. We're psychological beings, and we attach so much meaning to all of these things that so much of the suffering comes from that. And I think their journey expresses that very clearly.
Well, Sebastian, Siegel, and Maryann Williamson, I know that people in this Sedona audience probably have questions that they would love to ask you. So Patrick is out there with a mic.
I'm out with the mic, and I'm going to fire the first one as I go over here. First of all, thank you both for coming back. It's been since 2012 that we had you on this same stage together. So thank you for coming back to Sedona, and of course, thank you for sharing your beautiful message, Maryann, and your beautiful film, Sebastian.
Thank you.
Sebastian, I'm going to ask you this. How involved was Ken from the conception of the film and writing the screenplay to this? Was he along with you every step of the way? How much influence did he have on the writing, on the shooting, if any? And what kind of pressure does that put on you to tell such a deeply personal story to get it right?
Thank you. It's a great question. He wasn't involved at all. He trusted me fully. And I think that trust comes from a sort of trans-rational, intuitive sense. For whatever reason, he had read some of my own writing, and I think he felt that I could capture the imprint of the voice that needed to be expressed in this film and also articulate some of his work. So he never asked to see anything and just trusted completely. I think he got more and more, felt more and more reassured once he read the script. I know that it impacted him enormously. And then stages along the way, I would send him stuff, not too much, but enough just to. And then the end result, he loves the film. In terms of the pressure, I think some of that is also similar, that of course, the pressure's large, right, to carry that torch. But I took myself out of it, that I just go in total service to it in every part of the way. I do a lot of work as a craftsman, as a cabinet maker. I'm humbled by it, and I give myself to the process, and I want to collaborate always with people who love the process. I was fortunate in this film to collaborate with so many exceptional artists in every department, on the camera and behind the camera. So.
Thank you so much for being here, and I feel joy, actually, and it surprises me. In fact, I just realized something that was secret in your movie that I didn't realize till now. The way in which you were showing so much vulnerability in her passing into death allowed us to experience it fearlessly because we were seeing the actual fact of it as she was surrounded in love. I feel so happy, she says. Why can't we embrace that passage in such a way? Thank you for bringing that to light.
Thank you. As a filmmaker, as someone who loves movies, there's so many epic films that have affected me. And so few scenes where someone passes, where for anyone who's ever held someone or been with someone while they pass, it doesn't happen like that, like it happens in the movies. It happens like this, right? I wanted to make something that was just really real. That I'm saying in movies it doesn't, that a lot of times in movies it doesn't happen like that, but in real life it happens like this. Yeah, and that's why this dying scene is this passing scene is so different that, that was important, I felt. Yeah, so thank you. I don't shoot a lot of takes in general. There's a lot of scenes. The one where she rips up the kitchen, it's a oneer. I only shot one take on that. The end, and that's a oneer, so there's no coverage on that. The end, there's coverage, and I think Mina we shot two maybe on her, and then I think she wanted a third. And then on Stewart, one or two, maybe three. I didn't shoot coverage on that. That was just two shots.
Sebastian, Maryann, thank you so much for coming back to Sedona. It's great to have you back here. And thank you, Sebastian, for bringing this film. I think we're all our hearts are wide open, and I really am grateful for that. I just wanted to share that when she wouldn't leave the room, I felt that was a metaphor for life. She didn't want to go. She didn't want to leave him. And it was the one thing that she could control in her life at that time. Thanks.
That's a beautiful insight. Yeah. Thank you. Also with the takes in the film, I shot as chronological as I could. These actors were so dedicated, I wanted to give them the opportunity to experience it chronologically and let it unfold. Because I'm going to push them to the limit, the relationship with actor and director is sacred. And if I can help the actors feel as safe as possible, then they're going to allow the instrument to go all places it can, and which these two just, did on every level.
Thank you for this beautiful movie. We both lost our spouses to cancer. And this takes me right back to the night my wife died. And Maryann says, pure sadness. I still have some of that. So what this does, it just is like a magnet, boom. But that's okay, because I need to relive that. Because I remember my wife was unconscious, and I was in a great stress, and just awful. But I knew I had to say, Barbara, it's okay, you can go. And then she went. But she had to hear that. I said, well, be okay. It reminded me of that. So let me tell you something. Thank you. This means a lot. I have to relive it. She's been gone 10 years. But there's no closure. I'll never forget her. She'll never forget her husband. We love them and we love each other. It's a mystery how you do that. Because we share our stories together of what love we lost. And they're irreplaceable. But you know what? I love Kathy too. And she loves me. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Ken wrote this book for you, Ken and Trey. I made this film for you. Thank you so much. Yeah.
And I have felt that way in talking with you at times when you've, it's not a book about sickness. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. This is a big deal. And the catharsis, and for people who are going through it or who have gone through it, don't, obviously you don't underestimate it, obviously in the way you made the movie, but even in the way you talk about it and promote it, that's something to own. That is a huge gift.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, and I know it is. It's interesting just as a product of filmmaking, right? Like in book publishing or music making, etc. There are people who want you to see other movies, not this one. The only way a movie like this gets seen is 38% of people before they rent a movie will read Rotten Tomatoes or Amazon, will read reviews from viewers. And that's why now the differential between critics and viewers is so huge. If a critic is reviewing a Scorsese film or something like this, they want their name in lights, so they're going to say it was the greatest film ever. If Sebastian Siegel makes a film, they don't care. But the audience is the one that now, fortunately, the audience holds the power now, that films can be seen, that people want them to be seen. So please, when you get home, if there's anything you can do, if you think this is content that's important, that should be received in the world, even if you didn't like the film, if you think it's good for someone, please write a review online. That'd be great. Yeah.
And I think, just like this gentleman was talking about, I think many people will see that film. I know my brother-in-law would, and would say that was my story. That was our story. There are many, many thousands and thousands of people. This is their story. and who I think would really love to watch this film, and I hope we'll all help get the word out about it.
I really appreciated being able to experience the emotions where you going through the hallway in the hospital and feeling the horror of it, or going underwater, or the sensitive emotions. I just wanted to say that. But I wanted to ask you about your shooting process, because it seems like you're a man who did a lot of your own shooting in all your earlier times, and how you go about the group, in your group with shooting and in production. I'm just curious of your process.
Thank you. First of all, that shot when they're in the hospital room and then he goes down the hall and the hall gets darker and then finally he finds a room alone and he goes in and he cries, that he's showing the audience, we're seeing the audience is seeing that, or the reader, in this case the audience, but she doesn't know it, that he has to conceal that. And I felt that was so important part of intimacy, that at what point do we have to conceal something from the one we love in order to help them be stronger, and where do we draw the line? How do we do it? It's such a tough struggle that we all go through when we're deeply in love. That's a oneer, that's a single long shot. I think we did 3 takes or 4 takes or something of that. That was it. It's one of my favorite shots in the film. In terms of taking people through the emotions. I'm using also light as a character in the movie, and I'm using sound as a character in the movie, really. That it's man and woman on screen. In a lot of ways, this is also a story about the moon and the stars, or the sun and the stars, as being lived through these 2 people. And so I want to express that through the music, which is brilliantly done with Kim and Catherine Kluge. They did actually Scorsese's Silence, and I saw that film and then connected with them, and they just, there was a moment where, the scene where he's underwater, and then that you're talking about, that he comes then up to the surface and sees the stars. He's before that dancing in the bar, crying and laughing in Germany, and he just feels like he's hit this low point. That's his lowest sort of crucifixion point, followed immediately by this resurrection. In other words, he gets to the surface and he says, I'm gonna be ripped apart from this woman forever in this life, but she's right there in the stars. In fact, beyond forever, beyond time, we're already woven together. So I'm devastated here and now, but I can be rejoiced, beyond. In terms of light, the DP on this, Sean, he's been a partner for me on 5 projects, I think now. So we have a shorthand, which is important in directing a film like this. We've shot underwater, on a yacht, on a Zodiac, in a helicopter, car scene, etc. And so before going into the movie, we do a lot of lens testing. I'm acting out every character, shooting it with him, so that by the time we get on set, we have a very clear understanding of exactly how everything is to occur. So, thank you for that. Yeah.
Question right here.
Yeah, the intensity of that movie was intense. For 2 reasons. One is the line you mentioned twice was, when I get close to death, it makes me pay attention to life. And you said that twice, so you must mean it's important. And I'm thinking what they used to whisper to the Roman generals when they were parading into Rome after a big victory. Remember, you must die. Memento mori. And it seems like a core impetus of why we're here, to live. And the other one thing was, why didn't they do alternative treatment sooner?
Why didn't they do alternative treatment sooner, you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love everyone who sees this to read the book. It's an amazing experience. It's actually like no book I've ever read. And when you used to go into a bookstore, you didn't know, sometimes it would be in philosophy, sometimes in psychology, sometimes in spirituality, sometimes in biography. Because a book's never been written like this. It's written by 2 people. It chronicles his journals, and then it's his experience of it and assessment of it. And in making a film, also by truncating 400 pages into an hour and 40-something minutes, sometimes stuff has to be changed chronologically, but they did go in deep to a number of different holistic treatments and see a range of different conventional doctors. And I'm going to release a director's cut in maybe 30 months or something like that. That's about 2.5 hours that will explore a lot more things. In terms of the statement, because I can no longer avoid death, I pay more attention to life. That's in her speech, right? That was in the credits in Treya's speech. And so I felt it was important to show that on screen because that was also part of the words in the title of the book, right? Grace and grit. That it requires a certain grittiness to get through anything important in life, to carry on. And we have to sign up for that grit. If it's in love, it's in vocation, it's in service. But we also have to have this amazing sense of grace, right? Of lightness, of humor, of allowing, of surrendering the little self to the big self.
Something that has been come up for me around that, the idea of closer to death, I paid more attention to life. I have worked a lot with people who have been diagnosed with life-challenging illnesses. And one of the things I've seen repeatedly is that in the first 5 minutes, you just drop so many layers of ultimately meaningless preoccupations. And things get very real and very exquisitely noble and intelligent very quickly. And one of the things I've thought about Ken and Treya is we actually don't know what would have happened in their relationship had she lived. We don't know. Because on one hand, the tragedy of the story is that she died. On the other hand, the profound love of the story was brought to the fore because she was dying. So there's a lot of the sort of normal BS of relationships that they didn't have to go through, they didn't get to go through. The sadness is they didn't get to. The glory is that they didn't have to. It was this distilled process. So that was with me as I watched it.
And so on point, right? That any great love story demands this, that even if it's Titanic or a love story or Romeo and Juliet, that because the two characters have to confront their mortality, they do things that they might not otherwise do. In Titanic, these two people, because their love is never going to work, but because the ship is going down, they say, that's it, we're going to make this happen. We only got 1 second to live.
So let's get real.
Yeah.
In the Course in Miracles, there's also more than one place where it says, you can see all this at the point of your death, or you can see it now. There's reference to, it's all going to be very obvious to you when you're dying. You could just go there now. The Course in Miracles says miracles collapse time, and that's what their love story did. It just collapsed time. Let's just go straight for the real, which is one of the things death takes you to.
Question right here.
So the concept of death, I've helped a lot of people through the death process, and watching this movie was very healing for me because when you're helping loved ones die, you're caught up in that experience, but you can't, it's hard to be in the experience. So watching the movie, I felt so connected in a different way to those people that I loved when they were dying. And I just really appreciate your bravery in being willing to sit with that long scene because it just felt so unusual and not necessarily a gift that I would give myself because it is so uncomfortable, but I just really appreciate your kindness and bravery because people don't want to be there, but that when you can sit with it, it was very healing and reflective and meaningful, and I'm just really grateful.
Thank you so much for that. I cried my eyes out when I read the book, obviously, and felt like that in those last pages. And I acted out every character in writing the script over the course of 3 years or something like this. And then again and again, and then lived through it again and again and again. And every time I cry in this movie at some juncture, right? But every time the credits go and I see Treya's eyes, I pray, have I done this service? Yeah, so it's something like that, like this, that says I have. So thank you, because that's the only marker for me that's important. All right, thank you for that.
Well put. We've got time for one more question. If anyone has anything they'd like to ask, right down here.
Thank you. How has making this movie changed you?
Everybody loves to ask this question. I got taller. You know, I've had a long practice of meditation, of reading, of study, of service, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that early on, probably for all of us, there's some sort of transrational, deep intuitive sense, this sort of omega point pull to evolve, which we draw to, whether it's a vocation or when we meet someone that we love or we have kids and we know, whatever the thing is. That I think that early on, I fell very interested with a lineage of thought and writers, whether it was Khalil Gibran or Joseph Campbell or Alan Watts or et cetera, and then Ken Wilber, that it seemed to all happen in a way that was synchronistic, and then there was part of me that was observing this from the outside, so that when Ken Wilber's writing came along, this book I read late in his books, and this film chose me to sort of make it. So I'm not even sure how I've changed, but I know that I'm in service to it, and I know that in being in service to it is the only way that I was able to get this film made, right? To bring it. That if I engage in something, whether it's making something simple to eat, or I love a friend, I give my all. I'm an intense person, as you said back here. It's an intense movie. I'm an intense guy, and bringing this film to the screen, if it changed me in any way, perhaps it gives me an even better sense of humor.
You know what? His friends know how it's changed him more than he knows how it's changed him.
That's true, probably.
Okay?
Yeah.
So it is a huge thing to write and direct a film. It is a huge thing. First, there's the idea he was not a filmmaker that was already known in Hollywood. All that had to happen to get the investors, to get the actors, to put all that together. As someone who's been Sebastian's friend for many years, all you heard about was this film, Grace and Grit, that he wanted to make for years. And you loved him, and you love the book, and you hope it happens, but it's, you know, it was so single-focused, and I'm going to make this book, but like everybody else in Hollywood who's talking about the movie they're going to make, you're not sure he's going to make it happen, that he did this. And there's no way, I mean, I know you're modest, so you don't want to say it, there's no way you're not amazed at yourself. There's no way you don't wake up in the morning and go, shit, and it's good. So just because you're a human being, there's no way, and my hope for you as your friend, but I also know it's inevitable for you to know, and I hope that you do really take in, not just the achievement that you made it, but you made a really good film, a really good film that people such as this gentleman and that we all were touched by in a very meaningful way. And that's, you know, it's beyond the conception. I hope I'm in service to it. You did something beautiful, and that is the greatest service of all.
Thank you.
Well put. Thank you so much. Maryann Williamson, Sebastian Siegel, Andrea, thank you for hosting the conversation. They will be out on the red carpet so you can say hello. Please know how much we appreciate you, and make sure you vote on the movie as well.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.